Tonight we travel eastward, toward the dust-soft courtyards of the Mughal Empire, toward silken silence, marble steps warmed by the morning sun, and long, winding corridors that echo with the sound of nothing at all. India's Mughal palaces were places of grand beauty and endless restraint. Here wealth and discipline mingled like incense and stone. Rulers pondered the divine. Emperors debated gods and governed the vast. But beneath the glittering marble and under domes that seemed to float in air, lived countless lives wrapped in protocol, stillness and service. This is a different kind of history. Not battles and banners, but silence and slippers. Not empire as conquest, but empire as breath held in. As you listen, you may drift. And that's okay. This story isn't told to keep you awake. It's told to offer you a gentle descent into stillness, through a place that once buzzed with whispers, footsteps, and dreams. So now let's begin. Let's walk slowly through the palace gates. Imagine, you are awake before the sun. The sky is still a deep blue, almost black. The marble under your bare feet is chilled with dew. You rise from your thin bedding on the servant's side of the palace. No words, just movement, quiet movement. You are a palace attendant in the court of the Mughal Empire. Perhaps in Fatehpur Sikri or later, Agra. You live to wait. You wait to serve. You serve without being seen. The morning begins with sweeping. Wide hallways of white stone must be cleaned before the noble guests pass. There is a way to sweep. Slow, rhythmic, one side of the body always away from the walls. No lines of dust must be visible. No sound beyond the gentle whisper of straw on tile. When you carry items, bowls of scented water, scrolls, trays of folded silk, you keep your eyes low and your mouth closed. Eye contact is for nobles. Speaking is only for those given permission. You are not mistreated exactly, but you are invisible. Your clothing is simple. Dyed cotton, always clean, always plain. You wear no shoes in the inner halls. You eat when told. You sleep lightly, always ready for the bell or the knock that means your hands are needed again. Much of your day is spent in waiting rooms, watching couriers arrive, watching officials measure their greetings carefully, watching eunuchs shuffle through with scrolls. You are always near beauty. Walls inlaid with jade and lapis, fountains that whisper constantly, air scented with rosewater or burning sandalwood. But none of this belongs to you. You dust the same corners every day. The same curve of latticework, the same gold-painted molding. You learn its patterns like a song, not because you admire it, but because a single missed spot could mean demotion or removal. Some attendants serve in the Diwanaikas, the hall of private audience, where the emperor speaks behind screens of intricate marble. Others wait near the harem gates, where women's voices drift out in poems and music, but where no man may enter. And then there are those assigned to the perfumed chambers of the royal family. There you must master the art of presence without presence. You light incense. You prepare cushions. You listen to the breath of the prince or the sigh of the queen. And still you remain silent. Sometimes you are sent with messages, carefully phrased instructions that must be spoken precisely. No embellishment, no hesitation. A single word out of place and your life might change. At meals you stand behind the diners, always upright, always watching. And when the guests retire and the halls grow dim again, you return to your side of the palace, to your low bedding, to the chill of night. And perhaps you wonder what it might be like to walk those marble halls wearing silk, to speak your thoughts aloud, to be more than just a pair of quiet hands, a bowed head, a name that is never written down. But mostly you fall asleep quickly. Because before long, the sky will darken again, and the marble under your feet will cool again, and the rhythm of duty will call you back into its endless, soundless dance. Now, let's turn from the silent halls of service to the deeper chambers of the one who was served. Emperor Akbar, Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar, the third ruler of the Mughal dynasty. He ruled for nearly 5 decades, longer than most of his subjects lived. He built cities, erased borders, and carved his name into the stone of the subcontinent. And yet, Akbar was not quite what one expects from an emperor. He was a conqueror, yes, but also a questioner. He asked more questions than his ministers could answer. And many of those questions came from dreams. Let us drift into his world now. Into the mind of a man who could not sleep as others did. Akbar was born in 1542, under the star-shadowed skies of the Rajput fortress of Umerkot. He would grow up with elephants, with soldiers, and with whispered prophecies. He never learned to read, but he listened with great attention. He had others read to him. He surrounded himself with poets, scholars, mystics, and monks. He saw dreams not as illusions, but as messages, subtle notes from the divine, left in the quiet hours of night. He once dreamed of a single flame burning in a dark chamber, surrounded by 100 moths. When he awoke, he said nothing. But later that week, he ordered reforms in the court, fearing that too many of his courtiers circled power and would burn for it. In another dream, it is said, he saw a faceless sage, standing silently beneath a tree, holding out an empty bowl. He pondered that vision for days. Was it a warning? A request? Test? And so he built his famous Ibadat Khana, the house of worship. A hall not for prayer alone but for argument. Every Thursday night, scholars would gather. Hindus, Jains, Sufis, Christians, Zoroastrians. And they would debate gently in the light of oil lamps that cast slow, flickering shadows on the walls. Akbar listened. He rarely interrupted. Sometimes he asked a question. Sometimes he simply closed his eyes. When the hour grew late and voices softened, he would quietly stand, leave the hall, and walk out into the nighttime air, sandalwood trailing behind him. His servants did not disturb him when he walked like this. They knew. The emperor was still listening. To the wind, to the moonlight, to whatever echoed inside him. He created his own faith, Din-i-Ilahi, or the faith of the divine. Not a religion with rules or temples, but a quiet fusion of beliefs. Personal philosophy, a dream made visible. Many courtiers feared it, others admired it. But Akbar did not ask for worship. He asked for thought, for reflection, for stillness. He invited Jesuit missionaries from Portugal to explain Christianity. He sent for Buddhist monks. He studied the Ramayana, and the Quran and the Torah, not to compare them but to feel the spaces between them, to sense what truths might float unspoken in those spaces. At night he slept little. When he did rest, it was often in a small dark room with no windows, cool stone walls and a single oil lamp burning low. He would lie on a woven mat, not a grand bed. Sometimes alone, sometimes with a favored scribe sitting nearby, in case he woke and needed to dictate a thought. He spoke often of silence. He said that the most important things were not said aloud. In many ways, Akbar ruled not just by decree, but by mood. His presence in a room altered its air. He rarely raised his voice. But when he did, people listened as if hearing thunder in the distance. He was known to sit for hours, simply watching artisans paint miniature scenes, battles, gardens, lovers, on palm-sized panels. He once ordered an artist to depict a dream he had, a bird flying through 7 colored clouds, each one weeping. What did it mean? He never said. As he aged, Akbar grew quieter still, his steps slower, his eyes more distant. He spent his last years in Agra, watching the Yamuna River flow, murmuring in Persian verses, studying the stars. His final thoughts are not recorded, but those who were near him said he died the way he lived, not as a warrior, not as a king, but as a question, unanswered, lingering, a dream that never quite faded. Now let us walk forward in time, past Akbar's long shadow, and into the reign of his grandson, Shah Jahan, a ruler known for grandeur and for grief. The Taj Mahal, resting beside the slow curve of the Yamuna River, is often seen as a monument to love. White marble glowing by moonlight, mirrored in still water, its shape symmetrical, its silence almost sacred. But tonight we won't stand outside admiring its beauty. We'll go inward. We'll step slowly into its bones and discover how this impossible structure, quiet and eternal, was born not only from love, but from sweat, calculation, and the quiet hands of the forgotten. Construction began around 1632. Mumtaz Mahal, the emperor's beloved wife, had died giving birth to their 14th child. Her death struck Shah Jahan like a bell, deep and final. He withdrew for months, and when he returned, his hair had gone white. He ordered a tomb unlike any other, a resting place worthy of paradise. But paradise required labor. Over 20,000 workers were brought in: stonecutters, calligraphers, mosaicists, architects, engineers. Some came from Delhi, others from Persia, Samarkand, even the Ottoman lands. They were divided into guilds, each responsible for a layer of beauty. Every morning, workers would line up before the sun, tools in hand, turbans tied, silence thick in the air. Large elephants carried massive slabs of marble across wooden sledges greased with oil and water. A specially built ramp, nearly a mile long, was constructed to raise the heavy blocks up to the main dome. Imagine it now. The low grunt of animals, the creak of wood, the soft rhythmic chant of masons as they hoisted stone after stone into place. The heat of the Indian sun rising slowly over scaffolds of bamboo and rope. Inside the Taj, work was even more delicate. Artisans inlaid pietra dura, semi-precious stones, into the marble walls. Carnelian, jasper, lapis lazuli, and jade were shaped into curling vines, tiny flowers, and verses from the Quran. Every petal was set by hand. Full bloom might take weeks. The stones were chilled first, to prevent fracturing. Workers spoke little. They worked by lamplight at night, to avoid the harsh heat of day. Calligraphers painted elegant black script around the arches, each word planned not only for meaning, but for perspective. The letters higher up were made slightly larger, to appear uniform when viewed from below. Every detail was quiet, intentional, precise. The entire structure was designed with optical illusion in mind. If you look closely at the minarets flanking the main dome, you'll notice they tilt very slightly outward. This was done on purpose. If an earthquake struck, the towers would fall away from the tomb, not inward. Beneath the surface, a clever cooling system circulates air, ventilation hidden in marble screens, channels beneath the floors that guide the breeze. During the summer, the inner chambers remain cool, calm, still. And beneath it all, the grave. Mumtaz Mahal's true tomb lies not in the grand chamber you see when you visit, but hidden underground in a smaller, simpler room. There no sunlight touches the stone, no flowers bloom, only the memory of her name, whispered by centuries. Shah Jahan, when he died, was laid beside her, not above, not below, but equal. It was the only asymmetry in the entire Taj Mahal. Legends swirled around the building. Some whispered that Shah Jahan cut off the hands of the main architects to prevent another masterpiece from being made. But there is no clear proof. Perhaps it was simply a story, born of awe passed in hushed voices. What we know is this: the Taj Mahal took over 20 years to complete. It was not built by machines, not by magic, but by thousands of patient gestures. Hands smoothing stone, feet padding across scaffolding, brushes painting curves, sweat soaked into earth. And when it was finished, it was not just a tomb, but a silence made visible, a quiet so perfect it became eternal. Now we step further inward, past the throne halls, past the outer courtyards where soldiers and courtiers pace, through carved archways and softly swaying curtains, into the Zenana, the women's quarters. This was a world apart, a realm sealed within walls, a garden of whispers. To many outsiders, the Zenana seemed a mystery, lavish and secretive, cloaked in stories of beauty and intrigue. But tonight we won't peer through the keyhole. We'll gently step inside, quietly, respectfully, as a shadow in their stillness. The morning begins not with noise, but with scent. Before sunrise, A servant slips into each chamber with a copper incense burner. The air fills with jasmine and rose. The floors, cool and smooth beneath bare feet, echo only the faintest shuffle of silk. In one chamber, a princess sits in silence. A silver mirror rests in her lap, fogged with her breath. Outside, birds call from stone courtyards. But in here the world is still. She is not alone. Dozens of women live behind these doors. Royal wives, concubines, noble daughters, elderly dowagers, and even slave girls. Each has her role. Each knows her place. The Zenana was not merely a prison, nor was it a paradise. It was a layered space, full of comforts and quiet constraints. Breakfast is served on polished brass trays. Rice steamed in milk, soft breads, pickled lemon. Servants pass without speaking unless spoken to. A glance is often enough to give a command. Some women read. Others write poetry or embroider long strips of fabric, weaving lines of Urdu verse between gold threads. They gossip, yes, but carefully. Words here are delicate currency. Children play in a central courtyard, their laughter echoing off sandstone walls. But even they are trained to be gentle, never loud. The older women often guide the rhythm of the day. They remember other emperors, other storms. They sip cardamom tea with quiet pride. Their hands, wrinkled but jeweled, rest calmly on silk cushions. No one moves quickly. Time in the Zenana is syrup thick. Musicians arrive by midday, not to perform in grand halls, but to play soft ragas in shaded corners. A sitar drifts through the air. A low tabla rhythm hums like a heartbeat beneath conversation. Sometimes, a poet is invited to recite a ghazal, a romantic lament that lingers long after the final line. The women are trained in these arts too. Some paint in miniature, scenes of gardens, rivers, peacocks. Others play chess for hours, staring silently at the board while thoughts ripple beneath still faces. Lessons are given by private tutors, not only in dance or etiquette but in history, astronomy, even philosophy. Some Mughal princesses wrote memoirs. Others ran entire estates from behind a screen. The Zenana was not empty of power, but it was quiet. And yet, despite the richness, the perfume, the poems, there is a deeper thread. Solitude. Most of these women rarely stepped outside. When they did, they were veiled, enclosed in curtained carriages, seen only as outlines. They lived within walls. Walls lined with silk and marble, yes, but walls all the same. Their lives were shaped not only by wealth, but by waiting. Waiting for the emperor's favor. Waiting for letters. Waiting for suns to grow, or for fevers to pass, or for a change that might never come. Each evening, as dusk falls and the last light turns red on the carved jollies, those intricate stone screens, some women gather to light lamps. Small flames flicker in shallow bowls. They place them along the hallways, and in the pools of courtyard fountains. Not for brightness, but for beauty, for ritual, for remembrance. And as the night deepens, and silence thickens once more, a woman may lean against the cool wall of her chamber, feel the stone through her sleeve, and wonder, quietly, privately, about a world she has never walked in, a market she has never seen, a horizon she will never reach, a freedom she can only dream of in verses. But she does not cry. She hums, a song without words, passed down from one still heart to another, until sleep finally finds her. And so, our journey through the world of the Mughal palace comes to a close. We began in the hushed corridors of servitude, barefoot attendants, backs bent not only from labor, but from endless expectation. We felt the cool stone beneath their feet, the weight of silence hanging in the air. A life measured in nods, in glances, in unspoken rules. Then we wandered into the dreaming mind of Emperor Akbar, restless, mystical, forever reaching. A ruler who built not only cities but ideas, who questioned gods, time, and the shape of wisdom itself. From there, we stepped into the marble breath of the Taj Mahal, where every curve whispered grief, and every carved petal was a quiet echo of love. Not just a monument but a memory. not just stone but sorrow made visible. And finally we drifted into the Zenana, a place of poetry and stillness, of laughter muffled behind curtains, of beauty trapped behind walls. Each space we visited tonight was closed in its own way, closed by duty, by devotion, by stone, by silence, and yet within each there was life, quiet, enduring, richly layered life. A boy copying scrolls, queen learning constellations, a widow lighting a lamp for no one in particular. These were not the stories of battles or crowns. They were the slow, soft rhythms of history, the kind that rarely make it into textbooks. But tonight they were enough, more than enough. So now, if your eyes are heavy, let them rest. Let the palace fade behind you. Let the incense curl away into the dark. Let the songs of the Zenana drift into dreams. Because the world of the Mughals, so rich, so layered, so quiet, is still there, waiting in history's hush, just beyond sleep. Good night. Welcome. Settle in and take a deep breath. You're about to drift into a quieter time, long before the world moved with speed or noise, to an age of silk robes, hollow stone corridors, and distant echoes of brush against parchment. Tonight, we journey deep into the ancient Han dynasty of China, a world of silent obedience, slow ambition, and carefully contained power. Through this story, we won't follow emperors in shining armor or galloping soldiers. No, this is the world behind the curtain, the shadows beneath the throne, where whispers mattered more than shouts. Our path will begin with the strange and sorrowful life of a palace eunuch, one who gave everything for a place in the empire, and found instead a quiet, uncertain prison. Later, we will trace the silent strength of Empress Lu Ji, a woman who shaped history without ever needing to raise her voice. Then, we'll descend underground into the mysterious clay world of the terracotta army, standing eternally in stillness. And finally, we'll join the scholar officials of the Han court, men of ink-stained fingers who ruled with scrolls, not swords. Let yourself unwind. No need to remember every date or name. Just follow the rhythm, the details, the dust of old paper, and the soft, deliberate footsteps of lives long past. Imagine you're 12 years old, maybe 13. You stand in a dim stone room lit by a single oil lamp, its flame barely flickering. The walls are cold, undecorated. Outside, you can hear the shuffle of sandals, the distant clang of bronze gongs, and somewhere, the low murmur of court music drifting down long halls. You've just been accepted into the imperial service. Not because of your wit or strength, not because of noble blood, but because your parents, poor and desperate, thought this might offer you a better future. Chance at food, room, maybe a brush with greatness. But what they didn't mention, what no one speaks aloud, is that this future comes at a price. Step 1. You will never marry, never have children. Your body has been changed. Your voice already sounds different. Your reflection in the bronze mirror is unfamiliar. And from now on, your life will be silent. Your mornings begin before the sun rises. No rooster crows inside the palace. Just the rustle of cloth, the slap of wet rags on stone floors, the distant instructions of older eunuchs who move with the precision of shadows. You are given a robe, thin, rough. You tie it carefully. One corner too high, and you'll be scolded. You're handed a wet rag. Your job today to clean the scroll room. All morning, you'll dust lacquered bamboo strips, check for worms in silk-bound manuscripts, and count seals. Everything must be returned exactly where it was. If anything is misplaced, even by a hair, you'll be reported. Punishment is not theatrical. It's quiet. You'll be removed from duty, sent to scrub pots, denied meals, or worse, demoted from the inner court entirely and sent to labor in the granaries. Or worse, the latrines. The higher eunuchs know this. They don't scream. They don't threaten. They simply record your mistakes in small ledgers bound in black. You learn quickly not to cry. By midday, you're copying texts, slowly and without error. One miswritten stroke in the character for horse, and you've changed the meaning entirely. Your brush must be dipped in ink precisely. Too wet and it will bleed. Too dry and the characters will fade. Sometimes you hear the emperor walk past, his retinue moving like a river through the marble halls. You bow, eyes lowered, lips sealed. You do not speak unless spoken to, and you are rarely spoken to. At night, you sleep in the shared quarters with other young eunuchs. No beds, just thin mats. You learn to read lips in the dark, whisper stories from your old village. Try to remember what your father looked like. But over time, faces fade. The palace becomes your world. Some eunuchs rise. They become trusted recorders, palace stewards, even advisors. But each promotion comes with risk. Power among eunuchs is never stable. If you are seen speaking too long with a court lady, suspicion follows. If you laugh at the wrong time, rumors begin. If the emperor changes mood, your role may vanish overnight. You have no family name anymore, no bloodline to shield you. You live entirely at the pleasure of others. And so you keep your robe clean. You bow at the right angle. You memorize every detail. Who walked where, what order the dishes were served, how many scrolls were removed that morning from the archives. You become the quiet eyes of the court. And in that silence is survival. But you never forget what you gave up. And you wonder, on some nights when the rain taps lightly against the tiles, if those outside the palace ever think of you, or if they only remember the emperor and his robes, never the young boy who dusted his scrolls. Now, let us step away from the polished tiles and scroll-filled rooms of the eunuchs, and drift gently into another chamber of Han power, colder still and even quieter. This is not a place of poetry or obedience. This is the world of Lu Ji. She does not raise her voice. She does not need to. History remembers Empress Lu Ji as China's first woman to hold imperial power in her own name. But it does not remember her for kindness. Let us begin as before, not in drama, but in silence. You are standing in the shadow of the throne. The emperor is dead. Han Gaozu, the founder of the Han dynasty, has left behind a grieving court, an unstable succession, and an ambitious widow who refuses to fade into history. That widow is Lu Ji. In the early days, she was known for grace. Born of a modest family, married to Liu Bang before his rise, she learned how to survive in a world that didn't want women to lead. She watched carefully. She remembered names. She understood who whispered and who listened. When her husband became emperor, she did not celebrate loudly. She tightened her robes. She studied the palace. And she waited. Because she knew, sooner or later, the throne would be hers to protect. Not for love, not for honor, but because no one else would guard it like she could. After Gaozu died, their young son became Emperor Hui. Too young to rule alone. Too soft, some whispered. Too kind. And so Empress Lu took the reins. Not publicly, not officially, but slowly and without error. She did not command armies. She did not parade her power. Instead, she placed her allies in key positions. Palace guards, court advisors, local governors. She created a web so quiet that by the time her critics noticed, they were already caught. Her most famous act of cruelty was not loud or impulsive. It was deliberate. One of her husband's concubines, Lady Qi, had borne him a favored son, a rival heir. Lu Ji had her imprisoned, then over time erased. Not by sword but by slow humiliation. Her hair was shaved, her limbs removed, her title was taken. She became what some records call the human pig. Though even those words may be too vivid for sleep, the point was not to kill. It was to remind the court, this is what happens when you challenge a woman who does not blink. Even her own son, the emperor, was disturbed. Records suggest he retreated from rule. Perhaps from fear. Perhaps from sorrow. And when he died, Empress Lu continued to rule. not as regent, not as queen mother, but as sovereign in everything but name. For 15 years, she quietly constructed her version of an empire. She raised members of her own clan to high office. She removed dissenters. She kept the wheels of the state turning, all while ensuring that no one, not generals, not nobles, not court officials, could ever ignore her again. And when she finally passed away, the empire shook. Her clan was swiftly overthrown. Her enemies returned, and many tried to rewrite her story. Some called her evil, others called her brilliant. Some feared her, others admired her control. But all agreed on one thing: she ruled. And she did so in silence more terrifying than any battle cry. In the halls of Han power, where robes brushed the floor and voices rarely rose above a whisper, Lu Ji was the whisper that outlasted them all. She did not storm the palace. She became the palace. And in doing so, became the kind of legend history never quite forgets, even when told in hushed tones at bedtime. Now let's leave the palace. Let's drift away from whispering courtiers and cold-eyed empresses, and sink into the soft, dry earth outside the capital. Far away from politics, away from the throne. Beneath the soil of Xi'an, where the wind brushes over open fields and low mountains wait in the haze, something has been sleeping for over 2,000 years. Something made of clay, silent, ill, lined in rows. A terracotta army. Discovered by accident in 1974 by farmers digging a well, it would take decades to uncover even part of what was hidden. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of Pit 1, the largest of the excavation sites. The air is dry. The smell of soil, ancient dust, and damp stone surrounds you. Your footsteps echo softly as you enter the covered vault. And suddenly they're there. Thousands of them. Life-sized warriors, frozen mid-step. Each face different. Each posture held in perfect readiness. You are not looking at statues. You are looking at guardians, made not for the eyes of the living, but to serve a dead emperor. They were created more than 2,000 years ago for Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, the man who unified the warring states, built roads, standardized laws, and dreamed of immortality. He was obsessed with death, or rather with what might come after. And so, beneath an artificial mound designed to resemble a sacred mountain, he had built a palace for eternity, not of gold or silk, but of earth and shadow. This was not just a tomb. It was a world. Archaeologists believe there may be over 8,000 soldiers, 600 horses, dozens of chariots, and all arranged in formation, as if ready for a battle that never came. But the strangeness goes deeper. These warriors were once painted, vivid reds, purples, blues. But when the tomb was opened, the paint flaked away within hours. What you see now is gray and ghostly. But once this was color and pride. Some warriors carry real bronze weapons, razor sharp after 2,000 years. Others are bare-handed. There are archers, cavalrymen, officers with square armor plates, each meticulously sculpted. Even the soles of their shoes are detailed. And most haunting, none of this was ever meant to be seen. There are other mysteries too. The emperor's actual burial chamber, still sealed, is said to contain rivers of mercury flowing through a miniature landscape. A full underground city, designed to mimic the real one above. Ancient texts confirm this. And modern soil samples show unnaturally high levels of mercury in the ground. But the chamber remains closed, partly out of respect, partly out of fear, and partly because the technology to open it without destroying it doesn't yet exist. So it waits. Deep beneath your feet, a lost emperor lies in darkness, surrounded by his eternal guard. The terracotta army was not art. It was a statement. It said, "I will not be forgotten." But like so many grand statements of the past, it was buried. Time covered it in silence. Nature took back the colors. And the man who feared death now rests beneath a ceiling of stone, alone, unseen, and yet never quite out of reach. You leave the pit quietly. The air above is cool. Birdsong drifts faintly through the trees. But below they remain, those calm, watchful faces, guarding the shadows of a vanished world. Imagine now, a modest courtyard deep within a walled compound. A stone pathway winds between neatly tended plants. The roof lines curve upward like the tails of birds in flight. It's quiet. Only the soft tap of wooden sandals and the distant caw of a crow disturb the morning calm. Inside one of the rooms, simple, square, sparsely furnished, you sit cross-legged before a bamboo scroll. There is no bed, no decoration, just a desk, an inkstone, and a mind that has trained itself to carry the weight of a nation. You are a scholar bureaucrat of the Han Empire. Your day begins long before sunlight reaches the paper. You rise early, bow 3 times to the spirits, wash your hands in chilled water, and light a stick of incense. The smoke curls upward, slow, even, purposeful. A small daily ritual that anchors your thoughts before they drift into philosophy, politics, or prose. Your job isn't to fight or to command armies. Your job is to think, to interpret, to write, to advise. The Han dynasty, more than any before it, built its foundation not on generals or nobles, but on ideas, in order, in text. And you are one of the chosen few who knows how to read. And more importantly, how to write with clarity and honor. You earned your place through study. Years of memorizing the Analects of Confucius, reciting poems, mastering classical Chinese, and understanding the subtle meanings of thousands of characters. When you passed the local exam, then the regional one, you left your village behind. Not for glory but for responsibility. Each character you inscribe holds power. A wrong phrase in an imperial report could doom a tax district. A careless poem in praise of the emperor could be misread as mockery. So you choose your words carefully. And you speak even more carefully. You sit at a low table, copying an agricultural report from the western provinces. Grain yields have declined. A new canal project may be proposed. But should taxes be raised? Should the families be relocated? Or should a memorial be submitted to the emperor, requesting leniency? This is your work. Not glamorous but essential. You don't wear silk. You wear hemp. You eat simply. Rice, pickled vegetables, a thin broth with mushrooms if you're lucky. You sip bitter tea while you write, sometimes until your fingers ache. And yet there is prestige. People bow to you in the streets. You carry an ivory seal. You are addressed as master, even by those older than you. But none of it goes to your head. Because above all else, you are expected to live by Li, ritual propriety, moral rectitude, the sacred balance of behavior and belief. You are, in theory, the conscience of the empire. But that comes at a cost. You watch your words. You suppress your ambition. You navigate 1,000 subtle cues in every meeting. Say too little and you're dismissed. Say too much and you're exiled. Your colleagues compete for promotion, not with bribes or force, but with footnotes and calligraphy. Your rivals may quote lousy to undercut your argument, or submit a more elegant turn of phrase to the minister. Power lies in sentence structure. Occasionally, you are summoned to the palace. You shuffle behind velvet screens. You wait hours to speak a single line. And when you do, the emperor may not respond. But your counsel is heard, and written down, and sometimes remembered. At night you walk your courtyard again. The ink has dried. The brush is cleaned. The stars are visible between the trees. And in that stillness, you wonder if your words will last. If some distant generation will read your memorials, your policy suggestions, your humble poem about spring rice shoots. Or if, like most things, your work will be washed away by the next dynasty. But for now, you have done your duty. You have written clearly. You have thought well. And you have preserved order in a world that desperately needs it. And now, as we leave behind the whispering scroll halls, the cold shadows of palace intrigue, and the dusty echoes of clay armies beneath the earth, we return gently to the present. You've walked through lives marked by silence and duty, by ritual and control. You've felt the quiet agony of the eunuch's daily routine. You've stood beside Empress Lu Ji as she shaped an empire without raising her voice. You've wandered through corridors lined with stone warriors who've waited centuries for nothing more than the peace of sleep. And you've watched ink-stained scholars pour their thoughts into bamboo scrolls, line by careful line. So much of the Han world was built not on spectacle, but on structure. Not on noise, but on stillness. Not on freedom, but on the steady, daily rhythm of obedience, belief, and balance. And perhaps that's why their stories, though difficult at times, are so strangely restful to return to. Because in the soft distance of history, even pain loses its sharpness. Even struggle becomes just part of the rhythm of forgotten lives. So let those rhythms wash over you now. The hush of paper, the distant clang of bronze bells, the murmured recitation of Confucian texts in the early morning fog. You are not in a cold stone room anymore. You are here, at rest, wrapped in quiet. The empires rise and fall, but sleep is constant. Thank you for walking this path through history with me. Let your mind drift now, far from dusty archives and palace gates. Let the silence grow deep. You've made it through the court of the Han, and now, you can rest.